All right, let's get right into it. We're going to be talking about the rise of nationalism in India. It's an incredible story, really, about how a shared struggle against colonialism started to weave together a brand new, unified national identity from this huge, diverse subcontinent. So, let's dive in. After 1919, the Indian national movement just changed. It started spreading into new places, pulling in all sorts of different social groups, and coming up with new ways to fight back. These mass processions, like the one you're seeing here, they became a really common and really powerful part of this whole new era.
But this awakening didn't just happen out of nowhere. It was born from a time of intense crisis. The First World War had left India in a terrible state, economically. Prices for basic goods literally doubled between 1913 and 1918. Villages were being forced to send their men to fight in the war, and as if that wasn't bad enough, crops failed all over the country, and a deadly influenza epidemic swept through. The 1921 census says it claims somewhere between 12 and 13 million lives, just an unimaginable scale of suffering.
People had hoped that once the war was over, things would get better. They didn't. And all that hardship, all that disappointment, well, it created the perfect conditions for a new kind of leadership. And right on cue, a new leader appears on the scene, Mahatma Gandhi. He returned to India in January 1915 after his time in South Africa, and he brought with him a totally new, even revolutionary idea for how to struggle.
He called it Satyagraha. And the idea behind it was, it was radical in just how simple it was. It was all about the power of truth. Gandhi's whole point was that if your cause was true, if you were fighting against a real injustice, then you didn't need physical force to fight the oppressor. Not at all.
Now, Gandhi was clear. This wasn't about being passive. He saw it as an active soul force. A satyagrahi, a person practicing this, could win a battle not by hurting their enemy, but by appealing to their conscience, by making them see the truth. He truly believed this dharma of nonviolence could be the one thing that would unite all Indians.
And look, this wasn't just some abstract theory. As soon as he got back to India, Gandhi put it into practice. In 1917, he was in Champaran helping peasants fight against an oppressive plantation system. Later that same year, he organized another satyagraha for peasants in Kedah. And then in 1918, he was in Ahmedabad standing with the cotton mill workers. These were local fights for sure, but they were huge victories that proved his method actually worked.
Okay, so with these wins under his belt, Gandhi decided it was time to scale things up. In 1919, he planned to launch a satyagraha across the entire nation. And the target? A deeply unfair law the British were trying to push through, the Rowlatt Act. This act was just a slap in the face. It was rushed through the government, even though every single Indian member was against it. It basically gave the British authorities a blank check to crush any political activity they didn't like. So, in response, Gandhi called for nonviolent civil disobedience, and people answered. Rallies popped up, workers went on strike, and shops closed their doors in a massive nationwide shutdown.
The British were understandably alarmed by this popular uprising, and they decided to clamp down hard. On April 10th, in Amritsar, police fired on a peaceful procession. Then, 3 days later, on April 13th, a huge crowd gathered in this enclosed area called Jallianwala Bagh. Some folks were there to protest, yeah, but a lot of them were just there for the annual Baisakhi fair. They had no idea that martial law had been imposed. General Dyer marched into the area, blocked the only way out, and then ordered his troops to open fire on the completely unarmed crowd. Hundreds were killed. His reason? He later said his goal was to produce a moral effect, to fill people with a sense of terror and awe.
And the repression that followed wasn't just about terror, it was about humiliation. Satyagrahis were forced to rub their noses on the ground, crawl on the streets just like you see here, and salute every British officer they saw.
The role at Satyagraha had been a big deal, but it was still mostly happening in cities and towns. When Gandhi saw the violence spiraling out of control, he called the whole thing off. But he had a crucial realization. For any future struggle to really work, it had to be even bigger. It had to bring Hindus and Muslims together under one single unified banner. And that realization led right into the next major phase of the struggle. Gandhi saw a perfect chance to unite everyone by taking up the Caliphate issue, which was a protest by Indian Muslims to restore the position of the Ottoman Caliph after World War I. The idea was to launch one big, united movement for both Caliphate and for Swaraj or self-rule, and he called it the non-cooperation movement. The core idea, something Gandhi had actually written about years before in his book Hind Swaraj, was just devastatingly simple. British rule in India only worked because Indians cooperated with it. So what if they just stopped? If Indians refused to cooperate, he argued, the whole system would collapse.
So how do you actually do that? How does non-cooperation become a movement? Well, Gandhi proposed doing it in stages. You'd start with symbolic things, like giving back government-awarded titles. Then you'd ramp it up to a full boycott of every pillar of the British state: civil services, the army, the courts, schools, and especially foreign goods.
The non-cooperation Khilafat movement officially kicked off in January 1921. All kinds of different social groups got involved, all of them answering the call for Swaraj. But here's where it gets really interesting. That one little word, Swaraj, it meant very different things to different people.
Let's start in the towns. The economic impact there was just dramatic. Foreign goods were boycotted, liquor shops were picketed, and foreign cloth was burned in huge bonfires. And just look at the numbers here. The import of foreign cloth was almost cut in half. Its value plummeted from 102 crore rupees to just 57 crore in a single year.
And scenes like this became pretty common. These massive bonfires of foreign cloth weren't just about the money. They were a powerful visual statement, a symbol of cultural resistance, a way of rejecting both Western economic and cultural control.
But if you went out into the countryside, the idea of Swaraj was tied to much more immediate local fights. For peasants in Awadh, it meant getting out from under crushing rents and forced labor. For plantation workers in Assam, who were pretty much legally trapped on the tea estates, Swaraj simply meant the freedom to go home.
And these different ideas of freedom were often led by charismatic local leaders. You had Baba Ramchandra organizing peasants in Awadh. Then, in the Gudam Hills, there was this fascinating figure, Alluri Sitaram Raju, leading a tribal rebellion. He was inspired by Gandhi, sure, but he argued that India could only be truly free through the use of force, a very different take. Ultimately, these differences in goals and methods became a real problem. In February 1922, in a place called Chauri Chaura, a peaceful demonstration turned into a violent clash with the police. As soon as he heard about it, Mahatma Gandhi decided to call off the entire non-cooperation movement. His feeling was that the movement was getting violent in too many places, and that people needed to be properly trained in nonviolence before they were ready for this kind of mass struggle. This sparked a debate inside the Congress. Some leaders were tired of these big, messy struggles and wanted to participate in elections, to try and fight for reform from inside the system. So you have this pause, this political vacuum. The movement is over, the countryside is in turmoil, and politicians are arguing over what to do next. Mahatma Gandhi knew he had to find a new path forward. He had to find a way to connect this big, abstract idea of freedom to the real, concrete issues people faced in their daily lives.
He needed a new symbol, a powerful one, something that could unite absolutely everyone, from the factory owner to the farmer, from Hindus to Muslims. And he found it in something that the rich and the poor both consumed every single day. An essential item, whose taxation, he declared, revealed the absolute most oppressive face of British rule.